Long years ago, in the Second Age of Middle-earth, the elven smiths of Eregion forged rings of great power.
Yes, the 1981 BBC Lord of the Rings is considered by many to be the gold standard of radio Tolkien adaptations, and considered by some to be the gold standard of Tolkien adaptations in any medium.
And Sauron was, for that time, vanquished. But at length his dark shadows stretched forth once more, and he sought again for mastery over the rings of power.
This is the longest radio adaptation yet, clocking in at over 12 hours, originally broadcast in 1981 in 26 half-hour episodes, then rebroadcast in 1982 in 13-hour-long episodes. I haven't found a re-release of the 1981 edit. The earliest release I found is of the 1982 edit, so I'm going off of the hour-long versions of the episodes for the purposes of this video. Famously, this production stars Ian Holm as Frodo, decades before he would play Bilbo on film, and it stars Peter Woodthorpe as Gollum and Michael Graham Cox as Boromir after they had already played those roles on film. So it is the link between the Lord of the Rings cinematic universes. It's Lord of the Rings No Way There and Back Again. Also, a young Bill Nighy plays Sam in this, decades before he would be a future Bilbo's boss.
Hello, Nicholas. How's it ham?
Still a bit stiff?
Have we not gotten Steve Coogan into any Tolkien adaptations yet? That seems overdue.
Now, sit down, Gandalf. We'll have a pipe of old Toby together, and you can tell me your news.
Thank you, Bilbo. There's no pipe weed to compare with that of the Shire. I've missed it. As to news, well, that, for the moment, must wait.
Michael Hordern is a great Gandalf, which is impressive considering he reportedly did not understand the story at all, and later called the role a bit of a slog. Doesn't show at all. He's great. This is probably the best documented radio adaptation of Tolkien, not only because the production itself has been released numerous times, but because the main fellow behind it seemingly never passes up a chance to tell stories about the production. Whether on his personal blog or in the Tolkien Society newsletter, this fellow has told tales. And who is this fellow, you ask? Why, it's Brian Sibley, of course. Sibley has written numerous radio plays, and he has written and edited countless books, including much later writing the official movie guidebooks for the Jackson Lord of the Rings and Hobbit trilogies, movies that just happen to be co-written by his distant cousin, Fran Walsh. And yes, he wrote one of the essays in this book, but not one that has anything to do with radio shows, so I'm not going to read it today. He's also written books about Disney history. Yes, he's written on Tolkien history and Disney history. He's like me, except he gets paid for it. On top of that, he personally worked with P.L. Travers in her lifetime on a potential script for a Mary Poppins sequel long before the actual Mary Poppins sequel, but that project was seemingly killed in the wake of the regime change to Eisner and Katzenberg. Maybe the bites just weren't quick enough for old Jeffrey. However, he did years later write a book about the making of the Mary Poppins stage musical, and he wrote additional screenplay material for The Wrong Trousers, and he wrote the books that compiled storyboards for both The Wrong Trousers and A Close Shave. I've had this book for years and never even realized it was him, but look, there he is! The guy who brought Tolkien to radio in its most famous iteration also wrote this book I love, that's the storyboards for The Close Shave. This man officially has my dream career. Anyway, long before he accomplished most of that, Sibley was pitching radio programs to the BBC. Richard Imison, head of the BBC script unit, asked if there was anything he'd like to adapt, and he said his pie-in-the-sky dream work would be Lord of the Rings, not knowing that the BBC was actively trying to develop a new Lord of the Rings radio program, presumably to wash the taste out of the 1955 production. The BBC was negotiating with Saul Zaentz in secret to regain the radio rights, and only once negotiations were successful did everyone realize Zaentz didn't even have control over the radio rights in the first place.
That's enough, son. I'll buy it.
While Tolkien was no longer alive to approve the scripts, Christopher Tolkien was, and he not only gave his notes, but he gave a tape recording of proper pronunciations. This only went so far, apparently.
But Isildur, Elendil's son, cut the ring from Sauron's hand.
Isildur took it. That is tidings indeed. Isildur took it, Boromir.
Sibley was given the job, but due to his inexperience, he was paired with Michael Bakewell, who had previously adapted War and Peace to radio. But the task of breaking the story into episodes fell to Sibley, who was later made aware of Tolkien's opinions regarding interweaving the plot threads, but he had already come to the conclusion that there was no other way to properly dramatize the story. Sibley later wrote in Malorn, the Tolkien Society's annual journal, that if the serial had followed the format of the book, it would have been little short of a dramatic and artistic catastrophe. I don't know if he was oblivious to the earlier radio adaptations that did follow the format of the book, or if he was keenly aware of them and throwing some shade. So does it just present the story in chronological order? Not quite. There's some flash forwards and flashbacks throughout.
Now, however, Bilbo was no longer the occupant of Bag End, and sinister shadows lengthened in the Shire. But let us go back 17 years to an evening in early September when the chief topic of conversation at the Ivybush Tavern in Hobbiton was Mr. Bilbo Baggins.
But more of the story is presented in chronological order than not, so the listener doesn't have to wonder why Gandalf was delayed.
I have come for your aid, Saruman the White.
Have you indeed, Gandalf the Grey? For aid? It has seldom been heard of that Gandalf the Grey sought for aid. One so cunning and so wise, wandering about the lands and concerning himself in every business, whether it belonged to him or not.
Ooh, now this is a Saruman. Peter Howell really brings a mellifluousness that conveys the persuasive magic of Saruman's voice with just a hint of a sinister undertone.
But because of Radagast, Gwaihir the Windlord has come to me in my darkest hour.
No mortal tames the eagles of the mountains, not even Radagast or Gandalf.
So tell weirdos on the internet to shut up about us taking you to Mordor already. Also, this might be the only adaptation where Gandalf taking Shadowfax from Theoden is actually dramatized and not just described off camera, making this adaptation one where Theoden appears in all 3 volumes.
Hail Theoden, son of Thengel.
Why comes Gandalf the Grey unlooked for to my halls?
I have come to seek the aid of the Rohirrim and their king.
I have never heard before that Gandalf sought the aid of any man.
This production does not include every single song from the books, but it retains more of them than, honestly, a lot of them do. And I think this is the only radio production to actually put The Road Goes Ever On to music.
The road goes ever on and on, down from the door where it began. Now far ahead the road has gone, and I must follow if I can.
All the other English language radio productions just have it recited.
Roads go ever, ever on, under cloud and under star.
Yet feet that wandering have gone turn at last to home afar.
But only Bilbo sings it. Frodo still just recites it.
The road goes ever on and on, down from the door where it began.
Music is also used creatively to tell the story of the Battle of Pelennor Fields.
It was a great battle, afterwards told in many a song, in the feast hall of Medusel.
He heard of the horns in the hills ringing, the sword shining in the South Kingdom.
It's hard to convey large-scale battles in audio, so this choice was an interesting way to get it across without just having it described in narration.
Tired in a forest they drove through the foemen, failed and Thengel's son, where the press was thickest, shivered his spear as he struck down the south road.
I've heard some people criticize this choice as being a strange stylistic departure this late into the series, or creating too much distance between the listener and the battle. But honestly, I think making it operatic contributes to the feeling that this is an ancient mythology, which of course is what Tolkien was going for. There are some really creative flourishes in this. I like this device that the presence of the Black Riders and the temptation of the ring is signaled with this chanting of the ring's poem.
One ring to rule them all. One ring to find them. One ring to bring them all. And in the darkness, bind them.
I feel like that might have influenced Jackson's choice to give the ring a whispering voice. Unlike the 79 production, this version keeps the full weight of the Maggot exchange, that Farmer Maggot remembers young Frodo and forgives him, and that Frodo laments the loss of this potential friendship.
We'll hear anything on the road long before we meet it.
You know, Farmer Maggot, I've been in terror of you and your dogs for over 30 years, though you may laugh to hear it. It's a pity, for I've missed a good friend.
Well, you should never have gone getting yourself mixed up with Hobbit and folk.
So, this is officially my favorite Farmer Maggot adaptation. Just barely edging out the inexplicable Soviet innkeeper.
So the only safe thing to do is to go off in a quite unexpected direction.
Then we must go through the Old Forest and then on to Bree.
So the hobbits do go through the Old Forest, but nothing particularly noteworthy happened there as far as the listener knows.
Is there anywhere there we can stay?
There's an inn, Frodo. The Prancing Pony, if I remember rightly.
Without Bombadil to send them there, the choice to stay at the Prancing Pony just amounts to Frodo resigning to inns not making quite as long delays as sleeping outside does.
I am going to war, Master Meriadoc. I release you from my service, but not from my friendship. You shall abide in Dunharrow, if you will, and serve the Lady Airwin.
But I won't be left behind to be called for and return. I won't be left, I won't.
I will bear you before me under my cloak until we are far afield, and this darkness is yet darker. Such goodwill should not be denied.
Oh, thank you indeed. Thank you, sir, though I do not know your name.
Do you not?
And since you've got your visor down, I cannot see your face, begging your pardon, sir.
Then call me Dernhelm.
Okay, this time Mary should absolutely have recognized Eowyn's voice.
It grieves me, Master Gandalf, that our leechcraft cannot withstand this evil.
Evil indeed it is, Yorith.
We get Yorith, played by Pauline Letts. No Beargill this time, though. This story is no place for children. Also, we don't even have Baragond, so of course we're not going to have his kid.
Let the minstrel sing to us.
Now listen to my lay, for I will sing to you of Frodo of the Nine Fingers and the Ring of Doom.
The Minstrel of Gondor's here, too. Man, those past wiki editors really dropped the ball if they thought this guy was just from the Rankin Bass cartoon.
Frodo went forth on a fateful journey.
We don't hear the full version of the song here, but from what snippet we do hear, I have a hunch that this won't use the Ring of Doom, Cave of Gloom rhyme nearly as often as Glenn did.
Cave of Gloom, Ring of Doom, Ring of Doom, Cave of Gloom.
This production is pretty great. It's beloved for good reason. And unlike the two Hobbit radio productions, I think this and the Mind's Eye Lord of the Rings have distinct enough takes on it that I can appreciate both of them separately. This one, I think, is definitely the better dramatization of Lord of the Rings, but I can't really gauge which one is the better adaptation because, you know, the Mind's Eye production is the more direct, faithful adaptation, but this one definitely does the more interesting things with it. But yes, this production is considered by most to be the definitive Lord of the Rings radio adaptation, if not the definitive Lord of the Rings adaptation altogether. And it's been released on home media many times, including a special re-release in 2002 in the wake of the films, where instead of being presented as the episodes originally aired, they were re-edited to be more like the books. Re-edited to be in 3 volumes with a new framing device, where they brought Ian Holm back as Frodo after he had already played Bilbo.
The road goes ever on and on.
Oh, now Frodo sings it. A little bit.
Oh, so many pages left blank. Almost as if Bilbo knew that the story which he began would one day have to be finished by someone else. I've left them for you, Frodo, my lad, he used to say.
It is so surreal to hear the voice that I'm used to as Bilbo, but playing the part of Frodo imitating Bilbo. Ooh, a choir singing it now. Impressive.
All Bilbo's titles set down one after another. Crossed out one after another. My diary. Dull. My unexpected journey. Better. There and back again. Good. Added later, and what happened after, except that even that didn't satisfy you, did it, Bilbo? Crossed through like all the others.
Obviously, the perfect title for this story is Hobbiton.
How could I have known where the road would lead when I set out from Hobbiton with the ring? Or how could we have known when the Fellowship of the Ring left the safe haven of Rivendell? What terrible perils would befall us?
This framing device is used as a bookend, opening and closing Fellowship and Two Towers, and opening Return of the King.
Night's drawing on. The telling of this tale draws towards its dark conclusion. In those final days, as the storm clouds of war gathered and grew heavy, doom and dread were closing in upon us all.
Obviously, Frodo doesn't come back to close Return of the King because he's already sailing away.
I tried to save the Shire, and it has been saved. But not for me.
This 2002 edit runs into the same issue that the Jackson movies do. Telling the stories chronologically does not line up with the division of the trilogy in text. Rather than take the movie's approach of chopping off the end of Book 4 and adding it to Volume 3, this chops off the beginning of Book 5 and adds it to Volume 2. So Return of the King begins with the Samwise the Strong temptation, which I love.
Samwise the Strong, hero of the age, armies flocking to my call, marching to the overthrow of Barad-dûr. But what are you thinking about, Sam? You're no hero. A gardener. That's what you're meant to be.
But the first bit of Book 5 we hear in Volume 3 is Denethor awaiting Faramir's return from Osgiliath.
In Gondor, the Lord of the City sat in a high chamber above the hall of the White Tower with Pippin at his side.
Again, I disagree with Tolkien that the subplots need to be presented in the order they are in the book, but keeping things in the order they are in the book is seemingly the only way to keep the titles of the volumes faithful.